and it's a wound.
Hey.
Let's set up mine,
Shoot.
and I can take the wound.
Wow.
Rushes 2 from the top.
See, that's why we do it.
Oh, 2 6s!
Boom!
That's what we do, baby!
Oh my god.
Alright,
Now
I'm glad we have that.
yeah, now it's your action.
Samurai Spirit will run you $30 retail, although you may have a hard time finding it in your local board gaming shop without ordering it ahead of time. You can, however, find it on Amazon for about $20 as of writing. Samurai Spirit comes with a central board, various farm, villager, and fence tokens that interact with the board, some wound markers, 52 cards of values 1 through 4, 7 cards valued at 5, 7 cards valued at 6, 7 double-sided samurai boards with their associated tokens, 7 samurai-shaped meeples, an active player token, a rulebook, and one of the best inserts ever. The board is nice and clean looking, with all the tokens making the information present apparent, and providing clear locations for the different card types. The cards themselves look good, but are a little flimsy, showing some wear after multiple uses. The symbols on them are bold and obvious, making the necessary info apparent at a glance. The samurai boards have some gorgeous artwork on them, making me excited every time I crack open the box. There's just something so viscerally pleasing about seeing that your already awesome samurai will one day slough off his human flesh and become a mighty beast of immense strength. All of the tokens feel nice in your hands and communicate the information clearly. The meeples are also a joy to handle, having a little weight to them as you move them up and down your samurai's track. The artwork of the rulebook is quite nice, drawing me into the theme, but the phrasing can feel a little obtuse, making some of the mechanics unclear the first time you read through it. After a couple of playthroughs, however, you won't have any trouble teaching this to your friends. And I cannot stress enough how wonderful this box is. It's somewhat courageous in this day and age to have a box that is actually made form-fit to the components contained in it, with no empty space or extra room. The game looks to sell itself based on the game contained inside rather than how much shelf space it takes up, which is a refreshing choice in my opinion. You and your friends take on the roles of the 7 samurai of yore, as they look to once again protect a lonely village of farmers against the tyrannical forces of thugs hired by the government. Your goal, as a group, is to save at least 1 villager and 1 farm by the end of 3 rounds and survive to see it happen. Ultimately, you will want to save everyone in order to get the highest score possible. A large chunk of the game's strategy involves blackjack-like mechanics, but instead of gambling money, you're gambling the lives of your samurai and your team's success. Trying to predict the cards you'll draw and attempting to hit a personal blackjack value are 2 primary aspects of this game's strategy, so the comparisons become obvious fairly quickly. Above all, self-sacrifice and teamwork are themes that pervade this game and make their way into the very foundations of what makes this game tick. Players are going to compose a deck of cards based on the number of players at the table, 7 cards of values 1 through 4 for each player. Once a player is determined to go first, the game starts. On their turn, players may commit to one of 3 actions: fight, support, or pass. If you choose to fight, you'll draw the top card of the enemy deck. You'll be able to use this card on your combat track or towards one of your 3 defense icons. When you put a card towards your combat, you'll add the number associated with the card to your track, moving your samurai meeple up the appropriate amount. If this allows you to move your meeple to the highest value on your track, you immediately take the ki action of your samurai if you so choose, and then discard the first card in the line, reducing your track accordingly. If this pushes you past your highest value, your samurai becomes overwhelmed by the forces of evil, and is knocked out for the rest of the round. Lay your meeple on its side to show this, and burn away one of the fences on the board. If there are no fences left, burn one of the farms instead. Something else to keep in mind is any icons on the bottom left-hand corner of the card. If you play a card in your combat line, this symbol will trigger at the start of your next turn, before your action takes place, doing potentially negative things to you and your teammates. Any of these symbols that are covered by adding more cards to your combat line, however, no longer take effect, so manipulating this deck can benefit your team in a big way.
No, he's got to cover it or else we lose.
Yeah, burns on back.
When you put a card towards defense, you'll match the combat card with the symbol found in the card's right-hand corner to the left side of your player board. Keep in mind that you can only defend one card in this fashion. Some cards may not give you the opportunity to defend at all, forcing you to place it on your combat track. Something else to keep in mind is that everyone has their own special ability, from passing cards of certain values to their neighbors to choosing to fight multiple times on the same turn. These abilities make each player uniquely valuable and truly necessitate teamwork throughout.
I'm gonna just defend that. If I can, because...
No, oh yeah, because you ignore that, yep.
Yeah.
Abilities are important.
Remember to fight. And I
always
need
check
to fight
abilities.
against support.
The second action you can take on your turn is support. When you support, instead of drawing a card, you'll give your power token to one of your friends, regardless of where they are at the table. In doing so, you are giving them your ability temporarily for them to use on their next turn. However, the top card then becomes a spy that you let slip past your defenses into the village. There is a chance that these cards do nothing, but if at the end of the round any spy cards have fire in their bottom right-hand corners when revealed, these cards will burn a fence or potentially a farm, putting your village on the edge in terms of how many enemies you can actually let slip into the village. Regardless of whether that player chooses to use your ability on their turn or not, that ability is returned to the original owner after that turn has concluded.
I think Beck is going to need a passer ability of someone, honestly. Otherwise, we're going to be in a heap of trouble.
If I don't get
You
that,
already drew. I was going to say he could pass his ability to you, and then you could resist.
we're not
I didn't see
we're
what
not going to
that
get
was.
to him. The problem with that is we're not going to get to him. There's two people that are freaking get the right card, the game's over in front of them.
Regardless of whether the player uses the support token they are passed, after their next turn, that token is returned to their original owner. The last action you can choose to take is to pass. Instead of taking a normal action, you may place your meeple on its side, choosing not to fight or support for the rest of the round. Choosing when to do this is integral to your team's survival, depending on how close you are to overshooting your ki and how many of your defense icons have already been satisfied.
I don't know that I can do it. If I keep adding spy,
And we're about to have another one.
I'm going to pass.
You're out.
Yeah. Because I just take the moves back.
If all players pass, any remaining cards are added to the spy deck. The round ends when all of the cards from the enemy deck have been exhausted. At this point, players resolve any unfulfilled defense consequences. If a player fails to defend themselves, they take 1 damage, bringing them closer to death. If anyone dies, the team loses. If a player fails to defend a farm, one of the farms are set on fire, even if there are still fences on the board. If all farms are burned down, the team loses. And if a player fails to defend a villager, that villager dies. This is particularly bad, not just because there are only 3 villagers present on the board at any given point in time, but the bonus that that villager provides is lost. If all 3 villagers are killed, the team immediately loses. After these consequences occur, each villager still alive helps how they can. 1 villager will randomly heal the wound from 1 wounded samurai. 1 villager will add a fence to the village if you have lost any. And 1 villager discards the top spy card with no effect. Then, all spies are revealed and fences and or farms are destroyed accordingly.
Oh, I know, it's one of the fences.
Fence.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Come on.
What
This
that?
ain't looking good. Oh, there's no.
There it is.
Yeah. Game over.
All the enemies are shuffled back into the deck. In the second round, enemy cards valued at 5 will be added to the deck, 1 for each samurai playing. And in the third round, a band of bosses valued at 6 will join the fight, pushing players to their limits. The last thing to note is how wounds work. When a player takes a wound, they receive a token, which sits on their player board. Upon taking a second wound, players immediately flip their player board over and become the animal version of their character. The wound token that they previously had is returned to the box. Note that these characters have slightly larger fight tracks, meaning they can fight more enemies at a time. Additionally, their ki eyes have been improved in some capacity, making their special abilities even stronger. If they receive a third wound, they again get the associated token, but if they take a fourth wound, they die, making everyone lose the game. Also keep in mind that once a player turns their samurai into their beast form, they cannot heal and change back, meaning that transforming too early can result in your eventual demise if you take too many wounds. The game ends when either the team has successfully arrived to the end of the third round with all necessary farms, villagers, and players still intact, or when the players fail. Games often last about a half hour assuming everyone knows the game, although this can vary depending on how many people are playing. Beyond a single promo card, an 8th boss card, there are no expansions or additions to this game. The box suggests that this game can be played with 1 to 7 players, and, well, yeah, you really can. It's quite impressive how well this game scales. I personally love to play this game solo. While I did have fun playing the 7-player game, it is important to note that you will be waiting a little bit longer for your turns.
1 burn at the end is better
Especially
than 2 burns a turn.
Hey, buddy, it's your turn.
Morning.
And we're filming, God.
When I first played Samurai Spirit, I didn't really know how to feel about it. It felt like a very simple, methodical game where most of the time everyone would take the first option of drawing the card without really thinking about it, and turns would just continue on, so on and so forth. Occasionally someone might support, and eventually we would lose. And it felt very straightforward and uninteresting and unexciting. But as I continued to play it more and more, I started to understand some subtleties within the game. I started to understand the strategies that were present, and honestly, this has become one of my favorite games that I own. It definitely has edged out a number of other co-op games that have been in my collection. Ghost Stories is probably the most notable of these. Ghost Stories sits at number 156 of Board Game Geek's top-rated board games of all time, which really confuses me for a number of different reasons that Samurai Spirit, I feel, actively fights against or adjusts in a way that makes for a better experience. Ghost Stories has a lot of randomness in terms of how the game is played. There's a random setup for the tiles that are set out that players are moving on. Each player randomly selects the special ability that their character has. There's a deck of cards like in Samurai Spirit, but each card is very unique and different, making it impossible to really stipulate for what you're going to draw next. And there's also dice rolling. In Ghost Stories, if you roll poorly, you will fail every action you attempt to take. And when you fail an action, there's no real caveat or benefit to failing, like in something like Robinson Crusoe, where when you fail, you still get some income instead of having completed that action. In Ghost Stories, when you fail, and there's no recovering from it, and it makes the game feel very unforgiving and frustrating constantly. In Samurai Spirit, you can definitely fail an action. You can go over your maximum limit and, get overwhelmed by enemies. You can draw a card when you really shouldn't have. Forget to pass your ability to someone else, but that doesn't mean that nothing is gained from that. You're still taking one card on your player board and taking it out of the game. In our recording, before the recording I should say, In the first game, which we won, for the record, one of the players took a risk and decided to draw a card when they only had 3 left on their combat track. And they drew a 6 and they busted out. But in doing so, they removed that 6 from the game, made it so that that 6 didn't go into the spy pile and add to the growing potential of, fires at the end of the game. And ultimately, it allowed us to have some better odds in terms of figuring out what was or wasn't in the deck. So even when you fail an action, you're still achieving something important for your team. Another thing is that teamwork is so essential in this game, and it makes the game so engaging and exciting. There would be moments during this where we would spend a good 3 or 4 minutes simply discussing whether someone should or shouldn't draw a card at any given point in time. And that sort of teamwork and logical thinking and, just everyone working together to try to figure out even the most minute of details makes this game so much more exciting as a group. You feel connected to the people around the table, and every action you make can be the doom of someone else, which makes you double and triple check every choice that you're making.
Yeah, she could pass it to him.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, it depends on what you have. It's
5.
a 5.
I gotta put it on differently.
Yeah, because you
Well,
can't
if
defend
you
it.
pass it to him, his ability will
I
go.
can't
He
pass
can't
it.
pass his 5. So
It's 2, 4, 6 pass.
And it wouldn't help me.
Well, it would
My card is
5, 6, 2, 5, right?
Why wasn't your card working?
It doesn't help right now.
Yeah, but we get rid of cards.
Is this it?
It's a 2.
Okay, so you
You
can
can trigger your
It's
ki,
5.
or you can. Oh my god.
Okay, hold on.
She's got
Pass.
ki.
Pass to him. You can trigger to kill 2 cards. You can get rid of the wound and whatever else you want.
Oh yeah, the one.
And a 4, get her away from death.
Yeah.
Oh, me. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
2.
So I
You
trigger.
get a 3 off.
Get rid of the wound.
Yeah, I get rid of that.
And her 4.
You
Get
get
her away
Yeah.
from death.
4.
And then I lose that 3, and that is. Wow. Holy smokes. And I still ignore that 2, so a spy is not.
So now she can take any card in the game right
These
now
go
and still
back to
survive.
their respective owners.
This game may seem simple in terms of how the mechanics work and the actions that you have to choose from, but that doesn't make it a simple game. I would argue that this has a nice simple to complexity ratio. The game has a simple premise for the most part once you get past the symbology, but the stratagems that you use during this game really envelop you within the theme and make every loss feel potent and make you really feel the struggle to try to survive to the end of round 3. This certainly is not an easy game. I've lost many number of times, and even if you do get too good at the normal difficulty, there are hard and insane difficulties that challenge that even further. But that challenge is very exciting. It makes you want to keep playing it over and over again to see just how good you can get, how many people you can save, how good of a score you can get within each difficulty. And that sort of excitement can't be fabricated, in my opinion. It's hard to create that excitement without there being something meaningful there within the game. The people who would enjoy this game are definitely those who value critical thinking and cooperation over anything else. Without those 2 aspects, this game will fall apart, it'll be too difficult overall, and it won't be enjoyable for anyone around the table. But if you're one of those groups of people that value sort of talking through every little thing with those people around you, if you're someone who finds that board games are best played with those around the table rather than trying to solve a methodical puzzle in your head, this game beats out a lot of other games hands down, and by far as I think I can safely say that this is my favorite co-op game ever. That feeling of when you succeed or fail even at the end of that will just make you want to play again and again. And it all comes in such a beautiful and compact box. It's the full package in my opinion. And I really hope that I find another co-op game that's this good one day, because all other co-op games kind of pale to a degree in comparison. So, what do you guys think? Have you played Samurai Spirit and found it to be as rewarding, or do you think that there are other co-op games that, you know, convey these themes better or are just more fun to play? Feel free to let me know in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you saw here. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.